Kalashnikov Concern is one of the companies being considered for sanctions by the Trump administration. Vasily MaximovAgence FrancePresse, Getty Images Washington. Under pressure from Republicans and Democrats, the Trump administration on Thursday turned over to Congress a list of Russian-connected entities it is considering subjecting to new sanctions that are meant to rebuke Russia for actions in Eastern Europe and for meddling in the 2016 presidential election. Administration officials also made clear to lawmakers that they intended to impose sanctions on individuals in the United States and elsewhere who did significant business with the Russian entities, sending an early warning that such details must soon end. The list appeared to be an attempt to mollify critics, including Senator John McCain, Republican of Arizona, and Benjamin L. Cardin, Democrat of Maryland, who said that the administration had not moved quickly enough to punish a key American adversary, using legislation passed in July and signed in August by Congress. That legislation required that the administration produce the list of entities by October 1. Administration officials said the list was not itself an imposition of sanctions, but rather the government's assessment of organizations or persons that are part of, or operating for or on behalf of, the defense or intelligence sectors of the government of the Russian Federation. Officials said a formal decision on sanctions would come in the future. The list, a copy of which was obtained by the New York Times, reads like a who's who of the Russian defense and intelligence sectors. It includes the United Aircraft Corporation, which makes Sukhoi jets and Tupolev passenger airliners, Kalashnikov Concern, which makes the famed assault weapon used around the world, and Rosoboronexport, the chief state-owned arms exporter in the country. Democrats, and several powerful Senate Republicans, led by Mr. McCain, had grown frustrated over the delay in recent days. Mr. McCain, a fierce critic of Russia, threatened to use his position as the chairman of the Armed Services Committee to try to force the administration to comply. "We passed the law. They should execute it," Senator Marco Rubio, Republican of Florida, said earlier on Thursday, before the list was shared with lawmakers. "They say they are struggling to identify the companies to sanction. My answer is, sanction the ones you already know and keep adding to the list." The Trump administration answered those criticisms with assurances that it was working to draw up a list of targets, but that with minimal staff in place in the State Department and given the complexity of the legislation, it was taking longer than the law allowed for. The Russia measures were part of a larger sanctions package approved with near-unanimous support by the House and Senate and signed by President Trump in early August. The legislation also included sanctions on Iran and North Korea, but it was the Russia sanctions, as well as a provision limiting Mr. Trump's authority to lift them, that most irked the president. The sanctions were seen as a rebuke by lawmakers of both parties of Mr. Trump's friendly posture towards President Vladimir V. Putin of Russia and an effort to punish Russia for its annexation of Crimea, its military intervention in Ukraine and its meddling in the 2016 presidential election. Critics of the president have accused Mr. Trump of failing to be aggressive enough toward one of America's biggest adversaries, even as people connected to his administration are being investigated for collusion with Russians during last year's race. The United States spy agencies have concluded that the Russian interference began as an effort to hurt Hillary Clinton's candidacy, but later tried to explicitly help Mr. Trump. 3 congressional committees and a Justice Department special counsel, Robert S. Mueller III, continue to investigate how the campaign was carried out and whether Mr. Trump's associates were involved.